It's Monday morning here, Big 550 KTRS, and our 9 o'clock hour is picked up by KPLR 11.2, which is channel 187 on your Charter Communications system. Also, if you want, you can pick it up over the air with an HD antenna. It's 11.2 over the air. And, of course, we're on stltoday.com. Go to the opinion tab. We're on the front page of ktrs.com. You can download the app anywhere in the world from your smartphone. One app, one radio station. And, of course, the old-fashioned way on the Big 550 KTRS. This Ferguson story got a little attention last week or so when it was leaked by the Justice Department that there will be no civil rights charges that will be filed against Officer Darren Wilson, which means that basically this is now to rest. So there was no evidence of Officer Darren Wilson did anything wrong as a police officer, nor did he do anything wrong in the civil rights violation of Michael Brown, which sort of puts a new spin on things, and we can talk about that. But back in November, the end of November, when the verdict was read, and then we had looting, and we had rioting, and we had the fires, Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder joined us and talked about how the Ferguson mayor was begging for anybody in the state government to sort of engage the National Guard and to help his town that was burning to the ground. Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder joined us and told us about that harrowing night. And then we talked to Mayor Knowles of Ferguson. Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder joins us once again. Good morning, Lieutenant Governor. Welcome back, Big 550 KTRS.
Morning, McGraw. Thanks for having me.
You got it. So recently, this story gets a little convoluted, which is why we're sort of inviting you back here to sort of keep us abreast of all the facts. You told us the next morning, that James Knowles was trying to reach someone at the government, couldn't get it. Now we have some emails that sort of backs up that story?
McGraw, here's what we have. In a story that is a little over 2 weeks old, January 9th, that's Friday, January 9th, the Associated Press moved a story. It was a 2-page, rather lengthy story for them. And at the conclusion, at the very bottom of that story, was this amazing new information about emails that almost everyone overlooked. And among the reasons why it was overlooked was that was the day that David Peacock and Mr. Blitz rolled out their stadium announcement.
Right.
And you recall that noon press conference sucked all the media oxygen out pretty much in St. Louis for 3 or 4 days. So this, my friends at the AP should be patted on the back for their open records request that turned up this email that I'll talk about in a second. However, although they turned up the email, they sort of buried the lead, as it is said in the news business, because this was the big news from that AP story of January 9th. An email surfaced that the Associated Press had called for and gotten a hold of from St. Louis County Chief of Police John Belmar. And John Belmar's email, in rather cryptic fashion, by the way, he details who all was at the meeting, and it includes Senator Claire McCaskill, Attorney General Chris Koster, Mayor Slay's Chief of Staff Jeff Rainford, Charlie Dooley, and others and other police officials are at the meeting. And Belmar's email very clearly and plainly states the Guard, because they had been discussing whether the Guard would be deployed after the governor called them out, and the governor declared a state of emergency almost a week in advance of the November 24th release of the grand jury decision. And the email says the National Guard will not be in Ferguson per the governor of Missouri. So you had all those people I just named in a room who were aware that the Guard would not come out sometime before. I don't know the exact date of this meeting that is being referred to in the email. But McGraw, what we've also learned is that the basic purpose of that meeting with Claire McCaskill and Chris Koster and Charlie Dooley and the others I named was to oust, that is, to force the resignation of Chief Thomas Jackson of the Ferguson Police Department. They found they were unable to do that. It's reasonable to suppose, and all of these questions need to be put to the people who were at this secret meeting, but it is reasonable to suppose that what we had here was very intense pressure from the Obama Eric Holder Justice Department to fire Chief Jackson, when in fact they had no basis for doing so.
All right, a couple of questions here. And this might not necessarily be directed at you, but my first question is, why would the governor call a state of emergency, say he's going to deploy the National Guard early to circumvent, to sort of show a sign of force so that when the announcement is made, everyone will be safe, and then say we're not going to use them once we've called them up?
McGraw, that is the million-dollar question that I have been asking since the morning of Tuesday, November 25th, when the smoke and ashes were still, we were sifting through the ashes and the smoke was still rising on the businesses that were allowed to burn in Ferguson. It is inexplicable except by what I think we can now say that we know. I think we can now say that the governor of Missouri acceded to or laid down in the face of intense pressure from Washington, D.C., not to use the Guard. I think it is an abject and pathetic failure of leadership in our state, the likes of which I have never seen. And you don't have to take my word for that, Peter Kinder. Consult the president of the International Association of Firefighters, who might be a good interview for your show. His name is Mark Woolbright. He's right there in St. Louis. And he told another reporter at a TV station in town, and this is on video, that the governor assured them that if they sent their men and women out to fight fires that night, that they would be protected. They got assurances that the Guard would be there. They sent their personnel out to do their heroic duty, putting their lives on the line for us. And they got out there and came under gunfire and had to flee the scene because the governor had called off the Guard. Now, the governor of Missouri owes, well, I thought I misspoke, but I'll say it both ways. The governor owns this decision, in my opinion, and he owes the people of Missouri some answers that he has not given to this point. And we're 2 months past that awful night.
Okay, so the next day or two, you were on the show, and you told a story about how the Ferguson mayor, James Knowles, tried to call Nixon, couldn't get anybody. Ultimately, he finally got a hold of Claire McCaskill at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning after the damage has been done. We now know that James Knowles couldn't get a hold of Governor Nixon because he was talking to who that night?
The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported in a story I have in my hand on Friday, December 5th, they reported that the governor had spoken on 2 occasions to a White House aide who's pretty famous, Valerie Jarrett. He spoke to her, the White House spokesman confirmed, both on Monday evening, the night the rioting went down, and then again the next morning, Tuesday, when we all woke up to this awful scene in Ferguson. So the governor, who would not take the calls of the mayor, not only Mayor Knowles' call would he not take, and not only would the governor not call him back, but nobody on the governor's staff would call him back. And he has plenty of people who could have taken that call. But also neighboring Delwood Mayor Reggie Jones could not get calls returned, and he's quoted in this story saying, and this is Friday morning, December 5th, he says, I tried all week to get a hold of somebody in the governor's office, and nobody would call me back. Now, McGraw, that has always been a mystery, but I think some of this is coming into clearer focus with this email. If you had laid down in the face of White House or Washington, D.C. pressure to abdicate your responsibility as Commander-in-Chief of the National Guard, and you weren't going to send them in and you were going to let these towns and businesses burn, then you might not want to return the mayor's call and tell him why, and tell him what was really going down.
So,
but you know what? He avoided those mayors there was plenty of time to talk to the White House. He avoided those mayors. It's time for the governor to give answers to the people of Missouri. All of us work for the people.
So on the worst night, he's on the phone with Valerie Jarrett and not dealing with the crisis in his own state, in which he called out the National Guard. And now we know through this email, told the National Guard not to engage and to step down and to be nowhere near what was going on.
Yes, and McGraw, we have the email. If you want to get it, we'll supply it to you, and you can post it for your listeners and viewers to see for themselves.
All right.
Before I left the Capitol on Thursday, I sat down with Chairman of the Investigative Committee, Senator Kurt Schaefer, who's one of our brightest and ablest members. And his committee has subpoena power to enforce witness testimony. And I showed him the AP story that I referred to from January 9th, where the lead was buried at the end of the story about this email. And he said, we have our open record request going tomorrow. That was last Friday, the 23rd. And this will be included in it. And he said, we're going to get all the emails. Who knows what other emails and evidence is out there, McGraw? The need for answers is real. It stares all Missourians in the face. It stares the governor in the face. And although he avoided talking to those mayors and would not return their calls, he cannot forever refuse to answer to the people of Missouri for whom he works.
Okay, ultimately, he's not clearly talking to any media outlet anytime soon. Will he be forced to testify in front of this committee down in Jefferson City?
There are people who work for him who are within the reach of the subpoena who will be compelled to testify. I don't know whether the subpoena can force the testimony of a co-equal branch of government, that is the governor, the chief executive, or not.
Right.
But I believe public pressure can result in his having to answer questions publicly.
Last question for you, Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder. Tom Jackson, the police chief of Ferguson, is still the police chief of Ferguson. So we can assume that he stood up to the pressure from this committee and from these Democrats wanting him to resign.
I think so, and I think, and he's still there. You're right. Good for him. I think we know that those leaders in that room, Senator McCaskill, Attorney General Koster, were trying to force his resignation, and they were doing the bidding of the Obama Justice Department in so doing.
Yeah. Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder, thank you for your time. You're always welcome here. Good luck down the road, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Okay.
9:23 here, Big 550 KTRS. We'll take a couple phone calls because while that was sort of rumored and sort of, I don't want to say officially known, but with this AP story that came out with this email that has now surfaced, is now linked Governor Jay Nixon with literally saying the National Guard will not engage with the protesters. This goes right in line with the story Jay Kanzler told us on the first night of the looting back in August, where the police were told to stand down. The National Guard was told not to engage. There was basically lawlessness allowed to go on unchecked, because the governor of the state, while calling up the National Guard and calling for a state of emergency, then did not allow them to engage. We'll come back and talk about it, but I certainly want to open up the phone lines and take some phone calls. 314-969-KTRS, 1-888-550-KTRS, or star KTRS. Those are the phone numbers, and we're broadcasting on KPLR 11.2. We're broadcasting on stltoday.com. Go to the opinion tab, ktrs.com on your phone or tablet, on your app, KTRS app, and, of course, on the Big 550 KTRS. Let me